All right, everybody, we just wrapped up, actually, depending on how you guys listen to these, a podcast on ultralight backpack hunting with our very own Dave in the office. And we're actually super lucky. We're going to go back-to-back here. At least we're going back-to-back. We've got some really cool guests here at Vortex. We've got Kendall and Judson from Camo Fire, Black Ovis, Crispy Boots distributor or U.S. distributor. Am I missing anything, guys?
I guess Elk 101 would be the other one, too.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, 101.
Right. We work with Corey real closely
and
managing the store side of things for him.
Awesome.
So you guys deal all kinds of cool gear. All kinds of
we've
nice
always
stuff.
got a few extra things up our sleeve.
So these are some guys that are, deep in the industry, very knowledgeable, wear about 17 hats apiece, I think. So we're just, we're lucky to have them here and excited to chat with them kind of about, who they are, what they have going on. I'm sure we'll dive into, my guess is, as per usual, a host of subjects, topics.
Yeah. And we kind of got in, actually, just prior to hitting that record button, we got into the fact, I think that they are a cool business that is very, very much customer focused and customer centered.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you deal with a business like that, they make you feel great as they intend to, but then you might not always get to know a ton about themselves.
Sure.
Because a lot of times we're talking about you. So anyway, we figured we could have these guys introduce themselves and maybe talk a little bit about their history. We actually had to stop Kendall for a second. We had to pump the brakes because he was telling us some super cool stuff about his skiing and background and, kind of just a lot of the stuff that he's been doing in the mountains over the course of his life, and probably that got you interested in some of this stuff that we're doing today. And we might even hear a little from Judson too. He was kind of keen on watching at first, but we managed to get a mic on him. So.
He was just going to sit in the back of the room and hang out.
We had to get him out. And then we got Paul and East here as well, too. So, but what do you guys say? You guys want to kick it off? Maybe Judson, we can start with you if you want to just keep it short. And
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so my position with the company, I'm the buyer. I'm one of the buyers as part of our buying team.
He's humble. He's the lead buyer, and he's
okay.
He manages that team.
So really, we're a product-centered company, e-commerce company. I mean, we just, me and my team, we focus on the product side of the business, and really for high-performance backcountry bow hunting gear, that's really a focus for us. And we want to get the best product. We want to have the best product. We want to partner up with key vendors such as you guys, such as Vortex, Sitka, Cryptek, all these really key brands, so that we can really bring the best product to our customer base.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's great. And we were just talking about how do guys go about buying stuff, and how do you choose where to spend your money, and you guys see all that side of it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of information. I do hang in the background quite a bit, but I'm the numbers guy. I mean, really, where we're looking at kind of a a national, just a USA base of customers. I mean, we are primarily a Western-based company. I mean, we're located in Salt Lake City, right in the Rockies. We've got several surrounding states, and that's kind of our main hub. But really, nationwide and even seasonality plays a huge factor. Where we're growing. Probably our biggest growing segment is in the Midwest. Really with whitetail hunting, even southeast with waterfowl. I mean, we're really doing well nationwide, and the products that span the nation and for all kinds of hunters. Because I mean, even hunters, they go, guys from the Midwest, they go out, out into the West, but they come to us because they're like, oh, hey, we bought some really cool stuff on the big game side, kind of the Western style stuff, but we're gonna go home and whitetail hunt. Do you guys still carry that stuff? Yes, we do. And so it's really kind of an interesting thing where, I mean, we have a local customer base that comes into our store and everything, which is awesome. I mean, brick and mortar is great, but being online and having, an emphasis on national hunting, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So. Hey, I think you kind of fooled us a little bit. You're pretty good at this podcasting stuff.
Guys sandbagging over here.
But it is interesting to see, though, a lot. You kind of alluded to it. The Western hunting has always kind of been a hub for a lot of the hunting kind of trends all over the nation. And you see a lot of those Western guys, they really, they need, and they've gotten into a lot of the more technical gear, and you kind of see that proliferating itself all over into the whitetail areas where guys used to go out in a flannel and jeans now go out in some more technical gear, and they take more technical equipment, and that's pretty cool.
Right.
To see. And you've done some hunting too in your past, right?
Yep, absolutely. Grew up hunting, just, growing up. It was interesting. I had none of my family hunts actually. And so it was a best friend who got me into mainly waterfowl hunting early on. We go for, ducks, geese, but then also we'd go up into the mountains, chase the doves, pheasants, things like that. And so primarily a bird hunter growing up. We did, just the rifle deer hunt there in Utah. Every year we'd put in for it. Never really harvested anything. It was just kind of a, grandpa had a rifle, so we're going to take it out 1 week a year and see what we can do kind of thing. But as I've grown up, and gotten really embedded into the industry, it's become a lot more technical, and I'm a gearhead anyway. And so, it's been fun to really kind of find out, what the best products are or what the best products are for certain people, certain demographics, price points, things like that. And it's just, gear's not everything, yes, it may or may not, make you hunt better,
right.
But at the same time, there's a certain level of confidence that you get when you have the right gear, and a certain level of comfort.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Judson, actually, one of the things I'll mention about him is his dad still owns a very small online retail, kind of outdoor and high-end, lightweight backpacking gear. So that's his background. He came from when he says a gearhead, it's inherent in his family. They're very driven.
Blood.
So brands like Hilleberg and
some really good stuff.
Yeah, there's a number of brands that he was familiar with prior to even coming into the hunting industry.
And,
right. Yeah.
And you said that your family doesn't necessarily hunt as much, or what was that?
They don't. My dad grew up kind of in Corpus Christi, Texas, and Wyoming, and he got all the hunting out of his system early on. And so that
Can you ever get it out of your system? Is that possible? I don't know if I could ever have that.
Right. Well, the type of hunting they were doing.
You just gave my wife hope.
But did he get into the kind of this technical lightweight gear then kind of once he moved, or was that out of a hobby of just like hiking? Or
yeah, he loves being in the mountains, and that's his mantra. Is he loves his playground is the Wind River Range in Wyoming, and he loves it. He's actually into the goat packing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it or anything like that. He's huge. Fun fact about my dad: he was the president of the North American Pack Goat Association. He's not only into it, but he was really
sandbagger.
Why would we have had you sit on the side? That's pretty cool. Yeah, packing. So do you, when you do that, do you train the goats? Do you
No, well, goats, the only training you do is more their physical, outlook and everything like that. So goats are, I don't know a lot about llamas and mules, things like that, but goats stay with you. I mean, it's like you're...
Like they try to come in the tent with you.
Oh, my goodness, they do. And anytime I go camping with my dad, I'm like, Dad, you got to tie him up. Yeah, I'm serious. He's like, I'll haul the rope. You tie them up, because they'll go and rub their horns on your tent, poles and everything like that. And it's just, but they're just they're friendly. They stay with you. They're not stubborn to the point. There's a few issues, and I don't know a ton about it, but there's an alpha in every herd, and so
the chief goat.
You got to watch out for that guy. And so when the alpha, he has to be ahead of everybody, and so regardless. And so if I try to hike up close to my dad, the alpha will come and he'll kind of hook his horns. He'll kind of push me out of the way because that's his spot. And so it's just
llamas are similar too, because when we've taken pack llamas into Colorado the last few years, sometimes there are certain pecking orders as far as like this llama does better in the lead versus that one does better.
Kind of like
behind.
Horses are like that too.
Yeah,
there's
not as much
sorts
potentially as like goats. I've heard goats south who I've hunted with. He had goats a few years ago, and he said they're like a needy girlfriend. You just can't. You want to go out and hunt, and you're like, come on, just stay back there. Leave me alone already.
Yeah.
I wonder, has he ever gotten any? There's that transmission of diseases between goats and bighorn sheep, and of course there's bighorns in the Wind River. So has he gotten into any?
He did. Yeah, he's actually. Yeah, and that's a controversial subject that I really don't want to stray into.
Yeah, we won't get into all that part of it.
He was very much involved, and there actually a lot of conversation. You can probably read online about that. But he was very prominent in that aspect, and Yeah. It was
Interesting.
good.
So
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
But back
goats.
back to the gear though. No,
Yeah.
no, my dad. So he has been a dealer, but just more of an outfitter, in that area for high end backpacking. I mean, specifically backpacking gear, not really, anything to do with hunting and everything. But there were a few crossover brands.
Yeah.
So Western Mountaineering sleeping bags, still to this day. I mean, that's in me as a buyer. I've been chasing them down like crazy, But they're very particular about they want to take care of their existing dealers in certain geographic areas, and so we've got a few dealers already there in Salt Lake City. We can't carry them yet, but we recognize it as a good quality brand.
Right. Right.
Hilleberg tents also great. We do sell those, but those are just talk about a good tent. Very very sturdy in extreme conditions, and it's good. So
That's awesome. Well, great. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
we said,
these guys would have fit right into
Man.
that ultralight
Oh, I-
gear.
I
It's
tell ya.
geez. And we were even talking about trying to figure out who knew about goats and llamas. So
yeah,
it's
we
like,
were.
no
that
way,
subject
shoot.
actually came up.
Yeah, I actually got some llamas this year
Did ya?
on a
All right.
loan from Bo Beatty, who does llamas.
I recognize the name.
Wilderness
Yeah.
Ridge Trail llamas
Yeah.
in Idaho. He's got,
Yeah.
I don't know, he's got like 180 llamas, and somehow I talked him into llamas on loan. But I think I did a terrible job this summer with those llamas. I didn't train them like I probably should have. They were 2-year-olds, so he has enough 2-year-olds that he wanted to, let me get, he can't spend all his time training these llamas because he's guiding or he's got a number of guys that work for him.
Yeah,
So he's running packs. So he sent me 3 llamas. I went and picked them up in Idaho, got a little training, me and my 2 boys, and they weren't that excited about them, to be honest with you. And they ended up doing more of the corralling and wrangling than I did this summer, because I spent most of my summer trying to actually refine the field fencing for them that I had and that my buddy had. And so I had llamas over the summer, and I will do it again. I'm better prepared now, but I hope he'll trust me again with some of
So
his llamas.
you hunted with them in the fall then?
I didn't
too?
hunt with those ones
Gotcha.
because they're too young to carry. Like
Oh.
Judson was saying, it's like one of us. If we don't train, there's no way we're going to make it. And
Right,
you can't expect
right,
to throw
right.
a 60-pound pack on your back and spend 8 days in the mountains. And same thing. I think we look at llamas or dogs or other things like that, and we're like, oh yeah, my dog's he'll get after it. And you go out there and you're hour later your dog's laying on the ground.
yeah.
So these llamas were just young and somewhat inexperienced. Usually when they hit about 3 or 4,
I was just getting how is that about the age when
they get
they're
bigger. And
mature
I don't
full
know.
size and
Don't
they
I'm
can-
not. Don't let me fool you. I don't know that much about them. The Whitworth guys, Dustin and Jason, I rent from those guys down in Mesquite, Nevada. So
Did somebody coin the term llamas on loan? Because that is.
I was gonna say I don't know many folks have taken out a llama loan.
But that's pretty
I
good.
think I'm seeing a T-shirt in my future.
yeah. But yeah, Kendall, tell us a little bit more about yourself too. How you got into kind of what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah hunting, and then my family moved to Oregon, and I kind of fell out of hunting, mostly because my dad was less interested. He was more doing it because of social. All my uncles and cousins, we'd all get together and hunt. So we moved to Oregon. I really kind of fell out of the world of hunting and got more into skiing. I taught skiing in high school at Mount Hood, and then got into climbing. Went to Italy and Europe and learned how to rock climb with some friends from Germany. And so my world became climbing and skiing, and spent the better part of my college years teaching skiing, and then started working for ski resorts. So I strayed away from both the world of hunting, which is what I'm obviously focused on now, but got into working for ski resorts, and then after that worked for an online company called backcountry.com, and got oriented in real education. I studied physical therapy in college, and then I went to work for a ski resort just because I was passion driven, and then worked for backcountry and got an education in online e-commerce, and then drifted over through a couple of things into starting Camel Fire, which is the first business that my friend and I started. And interestingly enough, I'd just gotten back into hunting at that moment and thought, oh man, where has this been? And hunting for me now is a culmination of all the passions alpine mountaineering,
Yep.
rock climbing, backpacking, hiking, etc. Yet it completes the package for me because I now have what I say is a less selfish, a greater purpose of acquiring meat, and then also just physically pushing myself, which Paul and I were talking about yesterday. But so about that time, I started drifting back into hunting, My friend Mark, who's my business partner now, after 10 years, we're still married, still doing our business together. We're still, and Judson points out a lot. We have, a little bit different personalities and focuses, but he had this idea, let's start Camel Fire, and he's like, let's do a deal site for hunting that's one deal at a time back then, one deal per day actually. And so we said, I was like, I'm in, let's do this. And it actually took us about a year to launch the website. Like most great ideas, there's always, roadblocks.
Oh, yeah.
We had some personal roadblocks with the birth of one of his sons that was real kind of trouble laden. I won't go into details, but yeah, that delayed us, and some other things happened business wise. And finally, Mark's the kind of guy that he'll push. He's a go-getter, and he'll push. If he wants to do something, he'll just push until it gets done. And you guys probably know people like that, or maybe you're like that. Yeah. And he just said, we're launching on this date. And it was actually, we just celebrated 10 years a few weeks ago. And so we launched Camel Fire, and in his basement, I remember the UPS gal, she came over and programmed our printer. And I'm like, I was laughing like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she's coming over to Mark's house. He had finished his basement in order for us to start this little business in one room, and that blossomed, into. Then we took over the whole living room down there, and his wife could barely get to the treadmill, and then we took over the garage. And during that time is when I met Vortex. I met Seamus at my first ATA show that first year, right after we launched, and Vortex was a little 10x10 booth, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we were pretty small.
Two people, Seamus, and then someone else. I don't know who it was. And I kept saying, man, we want to get some deals on our site, because Camel Fire is, as you guys know, is all deal oriented, and a lot of your products aren't. They're hey, right, we sell it at this price. And I just pestered him. About every month or so, I would call him. Hey,
what do you got? Got
anything? And he just said, man, nothing yet. And we did that for a better part of a year and a half until finally, something came. Our business relationship started. Yeah. So
we probably had something that was getting closed out, or
just some old item or something. And we were we were hungry, and we were hustling. At the time, we were still in Mark's garage / basement / rest of his house, and his wife finally kicked us out. She was really gracious. But then a few years later, we started Black Ovis, and because we knew that we would ultimately want to have the best gear collection of all the gear that guys would want.
And is that kind of what the focus of Black Ovis is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Everything except your weapon. So bow and rifle, and then the ammo. The only things we don't So if you guys are going to go to Colorado and hunt the high country, we can get you head to toe everything except for your weapon. So that was kind of my history, and since starting this business, obviously I've become more passionate about hunting, and it just reminded me of how much I loved it as a youth. And
yeah, you and I talked a little bit, Kendall, and you're doing some pretty hardcore hunts. You're doing some pretty physical stuff from the sounds of it.
Yeah,
we won't grill you for exact spots that you're going to.
Yeah, I'm like, as long as I can physically do, the things I want to do, then I'm gonna push, and I like it. I enjoy suffering in the mountains. Somehow there's some pleasure that comes from it, and I have the philosophy. I think I told you I have the philosophy that everyone can do something once, and so I always try to do things twice, like the Pikes Peak Marathon. It's 8,000 vertical feet up and 8,000 vertical feet down, full marathon on trails. And I did it once, and I did kick my tail, and then I said, I have to go do it again, type thing. So,
dang,
I'm kind of
pretty impressive.
I'm driven like that.
Impressive.
But don't get the wrong impression. I'm not some ultra athlete or something. Just crazy.
I don't know. That's pretty serious.
I tell you what, when you come down here to Wisconsin, you probably would be an ultra athlete.
Oh man, this place is beautiful. We've enjoyed coming here, and this facility. I have to tell you guys, this facility is having been at Vortex prior to your move here. This is unbelievable. You're really, really blessed for sure.
We appreciate it, but it's definitely cool. Like you guys were saying, it's definitely cool for folks out there. When you're looking for gear, like you said, perhaps everything but the weapon. In that case, to be able to shop with people and identify with people, call up if you have a question with people who do what you do and have a serious passion for what you do. It's not always the case. I think, there's people out there who get into it because they love it, but it's not always the case. Some people just get into it for, they just think, oh, this is a hot industry. I'll try and make a buck off of it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, for sure. I mean, the business, you have to be excited about what you do day to day. If it's the business that drives you, you got to be excited about that, right? Like, there's probably people in this building that really they don't hunt or they don't shoot guns or whatever.
Yeah,
but they love a particular niche of the business, and there's there's a few people in our business like that, but the majority of us, and anyone that answers the phone is likelihood is they just if you call between August or really between like July and December, the chances are anyone that you talk to is going to be like, oh yeah, last week I was doing this, or yesterday I was out hunting early, or I went duck hunting, 3 days ago and it was off the charts, or whatever. And that's that passion. I don't know. Probably I push that a lot, and I think it's important for me personally as well as for us.
Yeah, another thing to mention too is, because hunting is so broad, you got your bird hunters, you got your whitetail, and all different kinds of things, and also your products are varied. If somebody wants to know about a certain backpack or a certain boot, a lot of the guys, we know what each other uses, and so we're just,
true.
you know what, I haven't worn that boot, but here, let me transfer you over to Zach. He's actually got this boot on right now. He can tell you all about it, and so it's cool to be able to kind of shift around and get people connected with the right kind of gear guide or gear specialist, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That's sweet.
Well, when you call in, it's nice to have a resource like that. We're talking about pretty technical gear with oftentimes, maybe a very specific use or a type of place where you may want to use that. And, one tent might be great for, early season versus late season versus, there's just so
super
many
wet areas.
Yeah,
super
there's just
high
so many
altitude, windy areas. Super
weight
whatever.
consideration,
intricacies, budget.
Yeah, totally, everything.
So it's good to have folks
you guys have definitely seen kind of that rise of mountaineering type gear moving into the hunting world too, or I should say the hunters adopting more of that high end mountaineering sort of gear, and some of these brands that are kind of crossing that line between both activities really.
Yeah, it's been interesting too as that's happened, because as I got more interested in the hunting industry and became a part of it, there were brands that I'm like, why isn't a hunting company making like a super high end tent? And now you do have some hunting companies that are making very high end tents. Stone Glacier just came out with a tent that I had a chance to use, and it's a nice tent. It's a little bit of a erector set. There's some it's a little more complicated than your typical backpacking tent, but it's very high end and very solid. But I think there was an aversion. Some hunters were like, well, I'm not going to buy from those hippies or those granolas or something. The kids over at the outdoor retailer show, where now it's like, I remember using trekking poles, for example, early on in my hunts, and people are like, what are you bringing those sticks for? And I'm like, because this is what you do when you go in the mountains with heavy loads. Like when I would climb in the Tetons, we would backpack in with 60, 70 pounds, because we've got ropes and our cams and our harnesses and helmets, and I remember one climb we went and we did a route on the Grand Teton called the Petzl Direct, but you had to go up kind of a snowfield with crampons and ice axe in order to get to the rock, and then you could climb the rock. And then, we're carrying 60, 70, 80 pounds, similar to what we would carrying an elk out or a deer out.
Yeah.
So, I had friends who went on hunts that were like, why are you bringing those sticks? And I'm like, because this is what I do when I go in the mountains and I have heavy loads. And then now you've got, I remember Corey Jacobson, who uses Vortex optics, and Corey started like, oh, these tracking poles are legit about 3 or 4 years ago, and not to call Corey out.
It usually doesn't take long to convince a guy that haven't used them to, once he starts using them, he's hooked pretty
there's
quick.
An adoption, right? And so it's really cool to see hunters recognizing the need for these technical pieces of gear
and the stuff that guys have learned in the mountaineering world.
Yeah, being like down with buying those things and not being like, oh, that's what those silly climbers use, or which I felt was a little bit of the mentality
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure.
I got a question I think I probably know the answer to, but maybe it just would bring up an interesting discussion, which is kind of like a what came first, the chicken or the egg question. But like hunters kind of getting into more of that mountaineering stuff, like have hunters always been going to some pretty extreme locations? It's just that maybe they haven't had the best gear to do it in. Or did gear kind of migrate its way over, that mountaineering gear migrate its way over into the hunting arena, and now all of a sudden hunters are doing these more extreme hunts? Because I just feel like I see it more, and that could just be part of the times of social media and everything, but maybe it's always been happening.
Oh,
What
yeah.
do you guys, how's that worked? And Paul, you were guiding for years a while back too.
Yeah. Yeah, we touched on that a little bit in the previous podcast, but no, hunters, I mean, there have always been that core of, high altitude hunters, guys after sheep and goats and that sort of thing. That's always been out there. It's been out there. I'd say what I've seen along with the rise in really good gear is probably the interest in doing that sort of thing. I think the interest and the amount of people that want to go sheep hunting or want to go goat hunting, it's kind of risen along with the knowledge that you can buy great gear to go do it in. But yeah, that hunting's been out there. Probably goes all the way back to cavemen.
Do you think that
climbing up high?
Do you think
that
the aptitude? Well, I think there's also some. It's a really interesting discussion because there's also like people are becoming more acclimatized towards that style, or their aptitude for it is increasing. It's the same.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same discussion of the the 4 minute mile or other athletes are. Guys are going faster now than they ever have.
Yeah.
And how much of it is technical, like gear and stuff, and how much of it is just pure human progression?
It is. It's interesting.
And I think from a hunting standpoint, it'd be interesting to because I know the guy that used to pick up our USPS postal packages every day. He just retired, but his name's Joe, and he's an amazing bird hunter and texter. He showed me a picture from this magazine and the article from 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when he was in Alaska and he had the most gnarly experience sheep hunting. And I asked him, I said, Joe, were there and he goes, yeah, there were guys getting after it because the passion still existed then.
Right.
It did.
And it was kind of come hell or high water, I'm going to do this particular hunt or I'm going to pursue this particular game. But I think the aptitude for others to do it, and the gear has facilitated some ease.
It has helped it.
Right.
Here's what I've definitely seen, and this is probably within the last 10 years or so, is there has been a big uptick in guys in what I call adventure hunting. That that topic by itself, I don't think existed 15 years ago.
Why not? Why?
It was there. I mean, it was the guys that liked sheep hunting and liked goat hunting. They might have not put that tag on it, but that's why they were doing it. I mean, that's why we all loved it. It's hard, tough country. It's satisfying to go do it. When you talk about guys, once you went sheep hunting, you were bit by the bug forever.
Yeah.
And but for a long time, that was confined, I think, to a fairly small group of hunters. A lot of people looked at that. It's I don't want to do that. I have no interest in doing that. But somehow there's been a kind of a rise, in the last 10 years, I'd say, of kind of the hunter as an athlete. That I don't think you saw way back, but it's definitely increased. And now there's great gear to go along with it. So now it's kind of become a pretty...
It's
almost
almost
like attractive thing
another
to a lot of
extreme
guys.
sport.
It is.
Yeah.
And I was actually just listening to a thing. It's actually another podcast out there, Business Wars, where it pits, some classic business rivalries or company rivalries. And it was talking about Red Bull versus Monster, and you talk about companies that are drink companies that literally made extreme stunts and sports. They were always cool and interesting people. You talk about Evel Knievel. You got guys like that. People are always the old Buffalo Bill shows, right? But they turned that into they hyper accelerated that, where it was jumping out of a practically spacecraft and skydiving, and is the new cool thing.
Yeah.
You got to find ways to go bigger, higher, faster, crazier. And some of these, these hunts have almost ended up kind of being a little bit like that, where it's kind of you're climbing a big mountain or whatever, and you're really getting after it, and then all of a sudden you kind of get the extra aspect of then you're hunting an animal, and that's in and of
Yeah.
itself a little bit
Yeah.
kind of that primal predator prey instinct, which is a little
Well,
bit
you kind of
extreme
touched
feeling.
on that earlier.
Yeah, the
Cal,
desire
with
to
that.
push myself
and kind of that extra whatever it is that hunting something and
That-
bringing home meat from that
hunting aspect kind of
adventure is-
completes the loop a little bit.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think about, like, I like to backcountry ski, and to the point that you know, during the winter I'll get up at, you know, not as much now as a business owner, but maybe, you know, 3-4 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd get up 2-3 days a week at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 in the morning, drive an hour, and then put my skis on and climb up a mountain and ski down it once, maybe twice, and then zip off to work. And that was like, I was trying to maximize, and, you know, you're mitigating avalanches and rocks and, you know, steep chutes and falling off cliffs and that sort of thing.
I always want to mitigate the falling off the cliffs.
Yeah, it's an
Generally
important
speaking,
part, 'cause you don't make it to work if that happens.
Just have a healthy interest in self-preservation at that point.
But you know, it's like, if you're driven to do those things, then you know, really, what's the purpose of that? Well, it's all selfish. Like, my family doesn't benefit. You know, I'm not, you know, those lines I ski are not, you know, change. You know, there's no conservation aspect as we talk about as hunters, and so as a community, I'm like, yeah, it's really a selfish move for me to go do that. No, now I look at, you know, if I go backpack hunt or go on a sheep hunt, there's still some selfishness. Like, guys, don't fool
Right.
yourself, right?
Yeah, Right.
Our wives will all keep us in check.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
there is a selfishness that is associated with it, but it is more complete. I feel like, okay, I'm playing a greater part of a more purposeful meaning when I do that. You know, primarily that I'm bringing home, you know, meat for my family to eat, which, you know, I talk with people, and I have a lot of friends coming from a climbing and skiing, you know, profession and passion background. I have a lot of friends that don't hunt, but they're like, you know, like, wow, you eat game meat. And I said, yeah, we have not purchased beef in 9 years in my house. You know, I'm grateful that I'm able to fill enough tags and to do that. But so there's a part of it that it feels like a completion, and then also, you know, my role in conservation and game, you know, wildlife
Can
management.
be a very satisfying.
Totally.
thing.
So the pursuit is still, you know, it comes from within, but you know, like you said, Mark, the hunting does complete the circle for me.
One of the cool things too that you can do, and it's becoming easier and easier nowadays as well, is, you know, like you said, there's maybe that little bit of that selfish aspect to it, where it's kind of like, hey, this is a really cool experience for me to partake in. But in a business like your guys, right, you're just explaining, people can call in, they talk to Zach, hey, what kind of boots should I get? I'm wearing these right now, you know, and then people call into Vortex, you get a person on the phone, and you start asking about things. It's nowadays, especially with social media and with email and phone and text and this, that, you can start spreading more information and kind of helping one another out in order to have that better personal experience. You can help maximize somebody else's experience. Like Paul Neese over here, you know, has been guiding for umpteen, you know, years, and has now been, you know, working at Vortex for 20 some years, so he's just like a wealth of knowledge, and he can help. He's had these amazing experiences, and then, you know, some ding dong like me comes along, and it's like, you know, hey, I want to go out and do this too, and he can help me, you know, and I think that's always pretty neat. It's like that storytelling, or that information sharing is pretty cool.
To some degree, if you've had a friend that we probably all had associates or friends. It's like, hey, if I want to get into, who knows, trapping, like, oh, I know a guy like that guy. He's like the wealth. He's like this fountain of wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
People used to do that with me. I every ski season I would get literally 3-4 dozen people that would phone me, call me, come by the house, whatever. Is before texting, but hey, they would say, oh, hey, someone told me that you knew, what ski I should get, or what boot I should get, or what jacket or glove or whatever the case may be. And so we like, in our business, where it's like we want to be that for, because we already are. Most of the guys we hire are like, they're like Paul. they're a wealth of knowledge. They have a plethora of experiences or are passionate about something with related to hunting or just, the gear that you use in hunting. So, we seek out, we look for those kind of guys when we're hiring and say it's a benefit both to our business and to our customers. And it's also fun to associate with people like that. You don't, if that's what you love, then it's fun to be around
Similar
people like
interest,
that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there's something to be said about the information shared too. I mean, right now in our industry, we have this YouTuber effect too. I mean, it's cool. I mean, if you know somebody, that's one thing. But then you go on YouTube and you can find information galore. And it's
people you don't
interesting.
even know.
Exactly. And it's funny you talk about like the transition of mountaineering gear, over into hunting and stuff like that. One example for us in the boot world was Aaron Snyder. For example, he's using Scarpa boots, just hard, solid mountaineering, specifically built for mountaineering boots. Bringing those in, and he shares it on podcasts, puts it online and stuff like that. And we got guys down in Dallas, Texas, and no business, dealing with a mountaineering side boot. A Scarpa boot, but they're like, oh, I want Scarpas. I want it so stiff, everything like that. I'm like, no, dude, But it's interesting because you've got all these personalities in effect. I mean, that are sharing all kinds of information from adventure hunting with Cameron Haynes, companies like Mountain Ops, Wilderness Athlete, those guys. But then you've got other just personalities that share and are expanding all kinds of different aspects of hunting. It's cool.
Part of the reason too why you have probably some of the whitetail guys getting into more technical gear because I think probably information back in the day used to be shared much more locally. You know, so maybe everybody in Washington State would know something. I don't know anything. Gear. I don't know. Yeah, rain gear. I was about to say I don't know anything about Washington, but rain gear.
That's all you need to know. Rain gear. I grew up in Oregon.
Right. Yeah.
It does rain more in Washington, just for the record.
And everybody in Wisconsin knows how to make cheese. And but now it's kind of like somebody in Wisconsin can watch a bunch of YouTube videos or learn a bunch online about people who are mountain hunting and either go do it themselves or try to make something new and interesting over in their area.
Well, I think with that, I mean, it's like whoever you're, whatever video you're watching or folks that you're following or subject that you search on YouTube or a podcast about it. I mean, the awesome thing is so many things are like applicable, to whatever you're doing that maybe is like a very popular thing or a tool or a piece of gear in another region. But you can listen to that and you go, well, yeah, that's great for when I want to go on that elk hunt, but I know I can apply that same piece of gear, where I'm at, whitetail hunting. And, for me now, when I go whitetail hunting, I'm wearing all the same stuff that I go to hunt elk or deer or whatever, and I might have a few extra layers or, maybe I can, you just morph it to whatever you're doing, I guess, but there's so much crossover, and I guarantee there's things that whitetail hunters that are doing that, I mean, heck, growing up, dude, tree stands, not a thing. Now there's a lot of dudes in Washington hunting blacktails out of tree stands, using whitetail tactics, so there's just like...
Even in Utah, there's there's a number of guys...
These guys hunting elk out of trees.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I killed my first bull elk out of a tree.
Wild.
Well, and part of the reason is I knew of a particular tree stand in an area, and it had been there for years. Like the tree had grown around the climbing little stakes.
Oh no! So it wasn't going to fall out of the tree.
Extra secure.
But I was like, and I was going to Alberta like in 3 or 4 days. So I went and got in the tree stand. I said, I'm going to go stand. I need to know what it feels like to just sit in a stand. And called a spike in, almost got a shot on him. And then 2 days later, me and my two buddies were going up on this mountain. I said, well, I'm going to hike up to that tree stand and hang out. And they were like, good luck. Have fun. I said, I was leaving the next day, and they're like, all right. So then I rolled up there, and I used maybe a whitetail tactic. I took the cow elk urine, put it on a little piece of cotton, and then drug it behind my boot, all the way up to the stand. And no joke, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look up on the mountainside, and I see this tree just whipping back and forth, and I hear this bull elk just absolutely annihilating this tree. Did a couple cow calls, and then it stopped, and I thought, oh man, I'm toast. Like he ran off or something. I'm a terrible elk caller or whatever. and then all of a sudden I look down below me on the mountainside, and he comes out in this opening, and he puts his nose down right on that urine trail. He came right up 10 yards and he stood right at the sagebrush that I had kind of like put it on. And that stuff that I had watched on a whitetail show, I was like, yeah, use this for your scrape. And I was like, what's a scrape? I don't even know what this scrape is. But shot my first bull elk in a nice, well, not in a, he's a 300-inch
Holy
6x6.
Yeah.
Like,
Crazy cool.
tree stand hunting.
You're like,
So that's why
that
that
guy's
Utah.
thinking right now. Yeah.
So that's why that dude pounded these stakes in this tree 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. There is a lot of sharing going on with knowledge, across the country.
Yeah,
Styles,
it's so cool.
tactics. We hunt in Utah. We've got a really cool right on the Wasatch Front. There's a late season bow hunt, and anyone that has archery tack can use it. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's very hard because it's A, there's a zillion people, and B, it's very, very steep. But there are a lot of guys that are doing stuff like rattling and grunting and other things like that mule deer hunters never would have thought about or utilized.
Right.
Rattling. I rattled in a buck last 2 years ago, and I was sitting there like, this is not going to work. Rattle a little bit, and I'm like, use the Primos can.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I feel stupid out here doing this. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden look
Looking
over.
to be
and
sure nobody's watching you.
I know, right? This 2-point comes running in. I'm like, unbelievable. But I had seen that on guys' videos hunting whitetail. Thought this is interesting.
That's awesome.
That's a cool story.
I'm curious to know, like, from you guys, from your perspective, and Paul, you could probably chime in a little bit. Is there are a lot of whitetail hunters and guys from the Midwest, and we cater to a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of calls from guys, and we'll get calls like this month of guys like, hey, I need to get some new hunting boots. Oh yeah, where are you going hunting? Well, next year in September. I'm like, man, you're planning ahead. They'll say, I need a boot, and I start breaking it in. I'm like, don't worry, we got you covered. But what is it that keeps some of these Midwest hunters and Eastern hunters, what is it that stops them? In spite of all this knowledge that's being shared, guys like Born and Raised are sharing a lot of really good information to get guys over that edge. Why do guys still, as much as they desire to go hunting in the West, as much knowledge is out there, as much gear, knowledge that we're willing to share, for example, Black Ovis, what still causes these guys to not come west?
Across the Mississippi.
I think it's just it's still for a lot of guys. I think is a really intimidating thing. It just seems like there's so many different facets to that they have to learn.
The unknown.
The gear's somewhat different.
Just finding where and what to hunt.
Where and what. Physical conditioning for some guys is an issue for sure. But I think that's it. I think it's pretty intimidating. You look at the whole Rocky Mountain front. You've got states from Arizona up to Montana trying to figure out exactly where do you go. All these states have different rules and regulations, so you got to kind of wade your way through that. But yeah, picking a spot. If a guy has a mentor and he has an idea where he might go and hunt, I think that would solve it for a lot of guys.
Totally.
But you have to want it. And that's the way it's always been. You have to really want to do it, and the guys that want to do it, they figure out how to do it. They make it happen.
I think one interesting thing is I haven't hunted out west yet, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, and I mean obviously just being around here in the industry that we're in. And one interesting thing that you see is, you talk to people about like, well, where's a good spot to go? And you'll hear a lot of people be like, they'll say some really big names. And it's kind of like, okay, well, either that's a spot that everybody in the world goes, or it's a spot that's super hard to draw. It's like, I'm 24 right now, and you just said a place that if I didn't start applying when I was in my mother's womb, I'm never going to get it. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. What about this spot? And they're like, oh no, don't go there. You'll never get anything.
Oh, that means you should probably go there, Jim.
Right. So, but it's kind of confusing if you don't actually know that. Oh, that means you probably should or whatever. It's kind of confusing because you're like, well, where the heck should I go? It's just.
I think the where. Yeah, I mean that's the tough one, and I think for a person who. Much easier said than done, but for a person who truly doesn't have, that mentor, or you're able to go with a person that knows that area, I think you have to just find an area, and you should be able to do that, like you said, with online research and just states, and maybe you're not super into the draws, but there's plenty of amazing over-the-counter options, and just committing to going, picking a spot. It might turn out to be crummy. you're going to learn. You almost have to look at it as like maybe a multi-year investment.
It's almost like, Kendall, when you talked about opening that business and you just set a date and that was it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, guys, just, you've just got to just buy that tag. Just commit. You're going that
even
fall.
though you don't have all your ducks in a row.
Even though you don't have all.
It.
Yep. Well, once you've made that commitment, then it becomes easier to get those ducks in a row after that.
I also never even knew there was over-the-counter tags out west.
Yeah.
I just assumed there weren't any, because the places people talk about are like, I drew a tag, like I got a lottery, whatever.
Oh, that it was all drawing.
Yeah, that it was all drawing. And then somebody one time was like, I went over and just like, we just drove out and I got a tag. And I was like, you did what? Like, you didn't apply? Like, you can do that? Oh. Like, that was a big epiphany for me.
Yeah.
That was a big eye opener for me, because I was like, there are places out west that you can actually go and just get a tag.
You mean you give someone some cash
And they give you a tag.
Well, it's interesting. I was hunting in Idaho this year for elk. I typically try to go up there and show up. We had hunted this one zone, and the elk were freaking out, and we were the only people we were seeing. Next morning, we drove out back to our camp. We were hunting from our like a base camp. Drove back, and there were like 4 trucks at this little trailhead thing. I was like, oh man. And we had just got out at the same time these other guys did, and then there was 2 other guys up in front of them, and we started hiking and kind of hiked a little faster than these guys, because we were like, all right, it's a foot race now.
Yeah, it's on.
And as we passed these guys, they said, oh, hey, we kind of said hi to them, and I said, hey, we're from, I don't know, Tennessee or wherever, Missouri or something. Mm-hmm. And the thing they said to me, which was, and I could tell, they're like, oh man, we're just like, and I was trying to be, there's been people that I've run into that have been like absolute jerks in the mountains. And there's been other people that I've run into that have been just awesome. Just ambassadors for our sport and for our pursuit. And so I've tried to really be friendly, despite the fact in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, can't you go to?
He's your competitor.
Isn't there 50 other trailheads you could go to, but this one? But I remember the guy said, he goes, we'll stay out of your way. Like he goes, we're from Missouri or whatever he said. He said, don't worry about us. We'll stay out of your way. And I thought, dude, this is your country too. This is our. And I said, man, don't worry about it. Let's just go hunt. If we see you up on the mountain, and there are plenty of drain. We didn't see those guys, but that comment made me reflect on how some people, particularly guys from where we're sitting in Wisconsin, would feel like, oh man, I'm going to be subject to some hazing, or I'm subject to like stepping on toes, or I don't fit in. Yeah. And that really has resonated with me, and it stayed with me. And I'm like, I want to help people that I run into feel more like I can do this, and I'm in the right spot, and it's okay if I bump into someone. Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's okay, because we're all out here just getting after it, doing the best we can.
Yeah. That goes along with a little bit that "Hey, That's My Spot" podcast we did too.
Yeah. Hey man, this is my spot.
Yeah. But anyway.
That's cool. I mean, and just
super cool.
Way good on those guys for taking that initiative.
Totally.
And jumping in, and it sounds like that may have been their first time.
It was their first time. Yeah.
And I'm sure they had a blast and learned a ton. And I mean, like, it's not like I'm some crazy. Like every time I go out and do something, I learn something.
Yeah. You feel scared. Like you probably even if you, I don't know if your first time you had like guys that were helping your friends, or
always.
You probably still felt some intimidation.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I'm not as knowledgeable or whatever, but you just go do it, right?
Yeah. One of those barriers that you're talking about, logistically, it's a little bit tougher when you're coming from over here. If it's not your backyard, you don't get to, drive to the trailhead with the stuff you packed in your garage.
You can't scout all summer.
You can't scout all summer.
Go to a mountain before work.
Yeah.
And then heaven forbid, you get one. It's like now, if you haven't driven out there, or if you flew out there or rented a car, or now you got to get that meat home. And then also just the time factor. It's like, okay, well, if I want to go hunt Wyoming or something, that's possibly a 2-day drive on the front end, 2-day drive on the back end, leaving, max 5 days to hunt. It's tough. There's a few more things involved there.
I've learned from, I have a friend who actually, he's very much opposed to hunting. He was a guy that I used to ski a ton with and climb and trail run a lot. And he's just a tremendous guy. I love him to death. And we've done some crazy adventures climbing and skiing in Death Valley and things like that. But he married a gal, and he called me about 5 years ago and said, hey, Dan, my father-in-law, wants to come out from Vermont and hunt. He's like, can you just kind of point him in the right direction? I was like, yeah, I'm happy to, I'm like, what I didn't think was a big deal, like I have learned over these 4 or 5 years that these guys have been coming out now, is that, what I know, and I'm like, yeah, that's easy, is a big deal to them, or what I'm like, or as much as I was like, oh, dude, just here, I'll give you a couple of my zones. You guys are from Vermont. It's not like you're going to tell the internet like where I'm hunting. Go on in there, and what I didn't think was a big deal. Well, I hope they don't tell the internet, but no, they don't.
We just gave each other a look because we did have that. Hey, that's my spot podcast was kind of related to that. Anyway.
These guys, they've come out, and I don't think it's that big of a deal to kind of give them some tidbits. And I helped them with I give them a base camp tent that they could sleep in, and they used my old truck one year. Then they found out why I don't use that old truck as much as I typically do. But I've helped them a little bit, and I remember Dan and he killed the cow elk with his bow on the end, and his buddy Ebb, who actually manages. He's a general manager for a ski resort back east. He hit a bull, and they tracked it and couldn't find it. So I remember at the end of this year, he said, Kendall, we wouldn't be able to do this without you. And I'm like, no, you really could. Like, it's not, what I'm doing is not a big deal. But to them, like what you were saying about having a mentor, I realized finally, like, I guess I've kind of been their mentor. And it's been extremely fulfilling for me. And I'm like, you guys are always welcome. You guys can come every year. And unfortunately, I don't generally get the time to hunt with them because I try to do a couple of different hunts in that time frame.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting for me to learn that what I know and what I share that I don't think is a big deal is a huge deal to like someone like you guys that coming from the Midwest.
And I don't know your guys' histories. Well, actually, Judson, you briefly mentioned it. You got into hunting from a best friend. Did you get into hunting solely on your own, or
no?
Your dad?
It was family.
So,
it was a family tradition.
A lot of this stuff, oftentimes people who are mentors were mentored or mentorees at one point too. And so it all, Paul, I think you got into it from...
I'm actually one of the exceptions. My parents were not hunters, so I learned it all.
You cut that trail on your own.
But I had friends. I had a neighboring family were big hunters, and so in a sense, I was just mentored by somebody outside of my immediate family. But they did, they helped a lot getting me started.
Right, and then now you've mentored who knows how many people.
Absolutely.
But
as a bow hunter, though, as I transitioned to bow hunting 10 years ago, I didn't know a thing about it. And I had a good friend, Justin, that we hunt together in Colorado every year. The last 3 years, I've kind of finally earned into that circle of trust. But we go to his spot, and he mentored me seriously for a while, and I still learn from him. And I give him a ton of credit, and he's oftentimes like, "Nah, man, it's not a big deal." Like, but what he did for me as becoming a bow hunter, was a huge deal for me.
Oh, it's a huge launch pad. You know, I mean, just they really get that foundation.
Yeah.
So I love the business I'm in, and you guys probably find some satisfaction that you're in, because I feel like on a small scale, when I share information about product and gear, and I get to talk about what I've done, and guys come in the shop or guys on the phone, I get that. I recognize that we have an opportunity to be in a small way a mentor at that moment, teaching someone about a gear. And when we share experiences of, I was like a gal called, I don't know where she's calling from. She's talking about packs and what pack would fit her husband. I'm like, well, describe him. She's like 6'4", like 200 pounds. I'm like, you just basically described me. I'm 6'4", 200. And so I started talking about which pack I would use and why I would recommend it and when I used it. And all of a sudden she's like, I am so stoked I called you. My husband's going to be so excited. And
That's
I'm
a
like,
good feeling.
I gave you the exact thing that you need to buy. And so I feel there's a ton of satisfaction. And even 10 years in, like I still answer phones and talk to customers and love it.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Way cool.
It's interesting.
What do you think? This has been a super cool discussion. I think we can go. So, Judson and Kendall, we got a thing we do called last calls here when we're closing up. And basically, we just kind of say any last call that's on your mind, mildly semi-related in some fashion. It doesn't have to be entirely related. So if you want to go off on a tangent, you can do that.
Judson, you're up.
No,
you haven't talked for a little while.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
dear. No,
Break the ice.
No, I mean, I just think maybe just to take a step back and just, really, honestly, just grateful for this opportunity to come visit you guys. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Just from one, maybe not related to the topic at hand, but just kind of seeing the company that you guys are and what you stand for. It was interesting, for listeners out there. They have a birthday. You guys have a birthday thing where.
Oh, you guys are here for birthday lunch yesterday?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it was tacos. It was a good time.
No, it was great. It was cool to see. Is it Dan? Dan, get up in front of the entire company over a loudspeaker and just, recognize people that have been here 5 years and, kind of celebrating the anniversaries for employees, talking about, and then bringing the birthdays up for the whole month of November, right?
Yeah.
And then everything.
Yeah.
And just the culture that surrounds the business. It's cool to see. I mean, having worked with you guys in the industry for, several years now, seeing what you've done in the industry with your products, but also, VIP warranty, things like that. Coming here, it's been an amazing experience. Really cool from my perspective to, from the business aspect, coming to see the real life, the brick and mortar, the people that run the engine that you are, that run the company. It's been spectacular.
It's been good having you guys.
Great.
Glad you
Good
came
having you,
on
yeah.
a taco birthday.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's way better than any of the other ones. But that's cool.
You're
Thanks.
talking to a guy that could eat. Well, actually, that does eat tacos 7 days a week.
I had tacos at lunch. I had burrito last night. I have white chicken chili for lunch, and I'm eating tacos tonight.
No way.
And when we go on our hunt, we're probably gonna eat tacos every night.
We found that Mexican joint.
Anyway,
Unbelievable.
Kendall, you wanna?
I think even though our discussion started out with just talking about the backpack hunting and stuff, I'm grateful for where you took the discussion, because one of the things I think about, and I want to. I think there's one guy that I remember. His name is Hans. He had an interesting name. It was like Lance, but with an H.
Oh,
And my friend Justin and I that we talked about. It was one morning. We were like, oh, it was during this time of year, snowy, cold, and we had one day to hunt together, and we hiked in 3 miles or so on this trail, and we're like, nobody's going to be here. This is going to be money. We're going to come over this ridge, and there's going to be deer everywhere. We're going to go on some stalks and shoot a big buck. We get right over the top, and we run into this guy, Hans, and I'm like, oh, man. And we're in headlamps, and I'm like, dude, is that a headlamp up there? And Justin, we were both just kind of like, oh, this is miserable. Why? And this guy comes, he's like, oh, hey, guys, so good. You guys made it up here. It's so good to see you. It's like, man, my name's Hans. Like, where are you guys going to head? And his greeting changed my attitude and changed like my whole. He single-handedly changed the way I behave in the mountains.
Yeah, right.
And
That's
so
pretty cool.
That's awesome. Man.
I think it's a good. I think it's I just something that I'm trying to be better at is just recognizing, like, in spite of how much we want our spot, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And we could tell stories all day long about that, how funny it is and how painful it is when a guy finds your spot. But encounters in the mountains, like, there aren't as many of us heading out into the mountains as we might think. And when we have a chance to run into people, I think it's cool to try and make the same impression on others. I try to make the same impression on others that Hans made on me, and that was 7 years ago. And so,
That's
yeah,
really
it is as many of us, and for the few people that listen to this podcast, like I remember that. Like, that would be my last call. Like, just let's be better than you can still in the back of your head be like, dang it, this is terrible. I thought I'd have this place to myself, but don't. There's not enough of us hunters looking out for and being kind to hunters in general.
Yeah.
So
No, that's way. I mean,
there's my soapbox for.
I'm gonna remember. I mean, that's definitely a memorable story, and I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Yeah.
For years to come for myself as well. Because I think
Yeah,
that's important.
heck yeah. That's I'll take that to heart too, and I'll try. I probably over the years have been a little too much the guy that didn't share stuff.
Or you just give them the cold treatment.
Give them the cold treatment. As a guide, you tend to be sort of protective about stuff,
For sure.
and it's tough. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's a really good way to go. my last call is I'm gonna hunt elk out of a tree stand and put sound on there.
There you have it. That's a good one.
Put some estrus up to the tree.
That's a good one. My last one will be I think just a statement that has been said before, but support people who support you, and so it's a little bit tough because obviously being a manufacturer, we have many dealers who deal our product, and so to say that we only have one would be not quite right, but we've got these guys here, and they're an example of a fine dealer of ours.
Yep.
If when it comes down to going after a product and getting product that you're going to be taking out in the field and getting technical advice and stuff like that, whoever you're looking at, give them a call or shoot them an email and just see how that interaction goes on from there. So we have a lot of great dealers that'll get you taken care of, and I think that these guys are a fine example of one of those. You'll probably get a person on the phone, human being, and someone who knows the stuff pretty well. So,
Thank you. That's very kind.
That was as general as I can try to be, as PC as I can try to be. If there's any other dealers out there listening, we love you too. But
absolutely,
yeah. And you should come on the
podcast. You should come hang out.
This has been really enjoyable. Yeah.
Well, I've got 2 last calls. Surprise, surprise, Jim. The look of shock on your face is just astounding.
Yeah, it's weird how my shocked look also looks like my indifferent.
Poker face.
Yeah.
But no, so this is tying into what Kendall was saying about being inviting, and I guess this is I think it can create good karma, and I guess I'll bring up a story. This was actually just by my house, and maybe it's not the scale. Maybe the the secretism of maybe big game hunting is a little bit elevated, but I was hunting ducks in a little creek bottom right by my house, and this younger guy came in, and he had a golden retriever with him, and he saw that I was already down there, and he just kind of waved at me, and he was going to back out and leave. And there's not a ton of room down there. It's kind of an interesting little spot. And I was like, dude, just come over here, hunt with me. I'm like, there's plenty of room. We'll hunt together. And then like a half hour later, I shot a banded wood duck drake, and I was like, all right, maybe this.
Just recently?
This was a couple years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because you also just shot a banded goose.
Yes,
just recently
by the house.
And some random lady was like, "Hey, you want to use my dog to help find it?" And then that dog didn't find it. Then another guy came by and said, "You want to use my dog to find it?"
It was wild, man. I knocked this bird down, and like it's an interesting spot. That's like literally 2 minutes from my house. It's an open field, and I think just the way the lake's situate around here, there's a lot of bird activity. Predominantly, geese pass back and forth. I hear them over my house every day, and so I go out there and end up getting lucky, and I knock this bird down, and it's really tall, just a variety of grasses and tall things. And I thought I'd be able to find them because crushed them pretty hard and was having some trouble. And yeah, like Jim said, this nice lady, which like I wasn't expecting. She was wearing a hunter orange hat, but this was actually during our gun season, so I thought she was just trying to protect herself or be safe out there, which is a smart move. But she's like, "Hey, I've got a couple dogs. You need some help?" And like Jim said, another dude came over, and he saw the goose fall as well. He was pulling into the little parking lot area to do the same thing I was, and his dog ended up helping me find it. And
no
it was
way.
just like it was like I felt like I was just like
That's
this
cool.
community out there. I was like, man, like it was just a really, really positive experience. And I guess it ties into, just be helpful, be nice.
Yeah.
My other last call is Judson. Awesome meeting you for the first time. And Kendall, really, we've met multiple times, but it's always during that trade show hustle where
That's
you really
right.
Kind of a
don't
quick
have
run
time.
by,
Yeah.
So just really awesome having you here, and awesome to actually get to know you on a deeper level, and it's just been great. So.
Boom.
Thank you, guys. That's been awesome.
Thank you, guys. So we will close it with that. How about we just end on the classic bye?
Bye-bye.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.